Now you're listening to Fantastic Formosa with Joh Abrams in Taipei. All right, here we are. I'm John. We got a new guest today called Joseph. And Joseph, where are you from in the world?
Well, hi, John. I'm from Chicago, which is in Illinois, which is in America.
Chicago is a famous city. We used to call it the Windy City.
Yeah, there's some odd history to that. Some people say it's because we have so much wind, but I've heard the claim that it's from back when we were fighting for the World's Fair, and New York and Chicago were competing, and we won. And New York said that we talked so much we were full of air.
We're bragging.
Yeah. With some stronger words, perhaps.
Well, I'm from I'm from the Midwest and Indiana, and we used to drive up to Chicago on the weekends sometimes for fun. And I can guarantee you, we went up there one winter, and Lake Michigan has this strong wind on it. And with the snow and the ice and the cold air, Chicago was a nightmare. It was like being on the North Pole.
I wouldn't. I would say during the winter it's pretty bad. I think the summers are really, really beautiful. And I think the weather is kind of always changing. There's this thing called the lake effect, which makes the weather super variable.
Okay. Well, now Chicago is also famous for a great fire, right?
Yeah, that kind of is one of. So Chicago has a flag with, I think, 4 stars on it, and each of them represent like a major milestone or a significant historical thing that happened, and that's one of them. And that ended up defining a lot of the city. Chicago's a city kind of known for its architecture.
Brick. Right?
We chose a lot of fireproof materials, but also there was this thing called the Burnham Plan, which came out of the fire. Basically, the entire city was a planned city because, I want to say something like 60 or 70% of the city burned down. It was one of the largest fires in a major, developed place.
Right. It's one of the most, the Chicago fire of Chicago, I read about it in the history books when I was a kid, and there were movies made. I remember the fire chief of Chicago called the mayor and said, we have to create a fire break. That means we have to destroy a line of buildings, blow them up to keep the fire from spreading further. This is common in forest fires.
Yeah.
When you cut down a long line of trees trying to stop the fire from spreading. And the banks were on that same line, that same street. And the mayor said, well, there's a banks there. He says, there aren't going to be any banks if we don't blow them up.
A lot of what happened also, so going back to that Windy City element, and I can tell you a crazy story later about some fire issues. But the wind contributes enormously. So any fire on a windy day, which is not every day, but on a windy day, any fire could easily get out of control. The wind can be 20, 30 miles an hour. I don't know what that is in kilometers.
Not sure, but yeah, it's heavy.
It can be on a windy day, it's really crazy.
Non-stop.
It can be continuous. They have a kite festival.
Kite festival?
No, it's great fun, but
the kites disappear into the atmosphere.
No, but you can some days you can just sort of send a kite up and it'll just stay there all day.
You just tie it off to a tree and just have a picnic.
Seriously.
And, oh wow, I didn't know about this. So Chicago has also a very famous Al Capone mafia story.
Are you talking about Bloody Valentine, or are you talking about something else?
Chicago's, wasn't Al Capone this famous?
Yes. So there were a number of gangster bars, mostly on the north side. Some of them are still there.
I've been to one of them.
My favorite bar, actually, the Green Mill, is supposedly where Al Capone used to drink.
Okay.
They have a really nice Christmas party.
He was. This is when alcohol was illegal in America back in
Prohibition.
1920s or 30s. What year? 30s.
I think it was around then. It actually started. Supposedly, it started in Evanston, which is just adjacent on the north side.
Right. Okay.
A lot of the kind of very fancy rich ladies didn't like their husbands drinking. I think it was.
I see. Oh, those people. Yeah, the women, the wives. Well, it was a nationwide thing, right?
For the most part, with some exceptions.
Because
I think
he was sending this stuff all over the country.
Yeah, so there was Canadian whiskey and kind of the import-export of all kinds of alcohols. It was not an effective government policy. I think it sort of shows that trying to just ban something is not an effective policy.
Right.
But a lot of governments haven't really learned from that.
No. Well,
Made the gangsters very rich.
we had these famous bars that were called
Speakeasies.
Speakeasy bars. Now, these were underground bars, and you had to knock on the door, and they would open a little sliding eye thing and look at you, see if you're a policeman. And, and they always had really big guys there, we call them bouncers to make sure that there was no trouble. But, yeah, there were lots of these underground bars, right?
They still sort of, there are still some speakeasies.
For fun.
Well, I think in America, like the taxation and rules around alcohol have always kind of been controversial. Under Washington, which is the first American president, there was the Whiskey Rebellion.
Oh, really? I didn't know about
Yeah,
this.
supposedly the first Civil War was over the taxation of alcohol. But it's not discussed so much. It was a relatively minor historical event, but...
You can't ban whiskey, man.
Yeah. Well, Americans, drinking has been a part of American culture forever. Some people, I think, used to make, the reason why there were so many fruit trees was partly because they made apple-derived alcohol.
Yeah, right, yeah. Well, there was a famous TV show many of you have already seen. I think it's called Pinky Blinders.
Peaky.
Peaky or Peaky?
I think it's peaky,
Oh my God.
peaky like a cat, like
I'm,
peak.
I'm sort of like really, I made a huge mistake. Phew. Now I have to watch my back. But the television show was great, and it talked about the British creating alcohol. I think it was gin, right? Or rum.
The British do love their gin. I supposedly, and I don't know if this is true, gin is basically kind of like juniper-infused vodka with...
Okay.
It's not that dissimilar a spirit to vodka, but it has kind of that herbal element.
If you want to watch a good TV show, Peaky Blinders is, oh my God.
It's a great show.
Great show.
Not accurate at all. But
Not accurate at all, but completely fun and completely, I would have to warn the audience, violent. But it was the guys who survived World War I, and they were sort of, they didn't have any fear anymore. They weren't afraid of death. They weren't really afraid of. There was a generation. They're called the Lost Generation.
Well, I think one of the strangest things is like Churchill was actively served in World War I. He was in the trenches, and Churchill was incredibly like a hardcore battle scarred veteran.
Yeah,
I think that like a lot of the Peaky Blinders is fake, but a lot of the guys that actually survived the trenches were incredibly tough. I mean, if you went and charged the line under active enemy fire, I mean, that's just under chemical warfare. It just seems very brutal.
Yeah,
this is kind of dark though, Wendell. John,
go ahead. No,
it's just I hope it's not too dark.
No, it's not dark at all. But there's another TV show in the U.S. It was about where's that area that had Boardwalk.
Boardwalk Empire, yes, another great gangster show.
Now that's also a whiskey style.
So that's kind of the other. So Chicago was a distribution point for alcohol, but I think Boardwalk Empire is in Indiana. Is it?
I thought it was
Atlantic City.
Atlantic City.
Sorry. But that was, I think, partially where that was like sort of. I think they brought the whiskey in from Canada via boats somehow or cars.
Something. There was a great. Both of those TV shows are just great. Acting wise, the actors, the plot, the storyline.
I think Boardwalk Empire was a little bit more historically accurate.
Probably.
But they're both really brutal.
Yeah. Brutal means, no children under 16 or
Lot of blood,
violence.
lot of intimate relations.
Violence and intimate
Sex.
relations and betrayal.
I feel like we're giving this like I feel like this is an endorsement more than a.
Well, no, my listeners love to hear about different things. And you grew up in Chicago, and that was one of the more famous places. Al Capone was a very famous person, and we still celebrate him in many ways, even though he was a monster.
I think American history kind of changed. Gangsters were an important part of the unions, an important part of like American life. I think civil society has changed a lot.
Sure.
I think gangsters, for as violent as they were part of a social norm, and that social norm has changed. There is still actually, I feel like it's over exaggerated, but there is still a lot of like distribution of illicit substances through Chicago, and there is still a lot of gang violence.
Sure.
But if you go visit Chicago, unless you go to like the far south side or the far west side, you're unlikely to encounter it.
Yeah, I understand. It's been a very long time since I've been there.
It's a very safe city in like the center and the north side.
Sure, yeah. So you had you grew up there, and you not only grew up in the city, you also grew up in what we call the suburbs. One of them was called Skokie.
Yeah, so Skokie has a kind of an interesting history and relationship with Chicago. It was, I would say, kind of a lot of the development happened. I mean, it's over 100 years old as like it's a village technically, I think. But
really? Okay.
A lot of it was kind of the post World War II GI boom.
Yes.
So you had all these kind of couples moving and having kids.
Right.
It was still
baby boomers. Generation, yeah.
But it was connected via this thing called the Yellow Line. So Chicago has a kind of like Taiwan has an MRT, or most countries have like a train system.
Right.
Chicago has the L, or elevated lines.
Oh yeah, I've seen them in the movies.
And so the end stop, the farthest, not technically the farthest most north point, but the farthest north point, kind of when the system originated, was Skokie, and it's actually one of the places they repair the trains.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they have a big train depot there. It's not so well known, but it's cool.
How elaborate is the, I won't call it the subway system like ours, but Taiwan has pretty much a spider web now. What is Chicago's like? Is it all above ground, or is any of it underground?
Significant portion of it's underground. Significant portion of it is above ground. In the downtown area, it's mostly underground. Although there is a big elevated section. I think it's a lot less clean.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't run as on time.
Right.
But it is very reasonably priced, and it can get you places.
Right.
I think some of the advantages, the red line and blue line run 24 hours.
Okay.
I would not advise taking the red line or the blue line necessarily at 3 or 4 in the morning, especially at the farthest most points.
All right. Is this a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week train?
Yeah.
Or? Okay.
It's really useful. So the red line kind of runs north-south or south-north, and the blue line is still also kind of it's a separated parallel, so it's farther west, I believe.
All right.
But in Chicago, the lake is always east. So you can always kind of figure out where you are because the lake is always east of you.
I think of it as being north, but no, I guess not.
The lake is always east.
All right. Okay.
Lake Michigan, for the listeners.
Lake Michigan is a major port facility for...
It was a huge amount of trade back in the day. Nowadays, it hardly does any trade, I think.
Really? Okay.
I don't see a lot of boats on it.
All right.
Maybe I just don't know.
Well, the U.S. Navy has this basic training there in Chicago.
Well, Navy Pier used to be. Navy Pier is kind of, I would call it, it's kind of an entertainment venue. It's a little bit of a tourist trap. But it used to be like a Navy base, I think.
Maybe they moved it. We should explain to our audience what a tourist trap is. It's always advertised as a great place to go, and when you go there, it's not so good. But you can't get out of a tourist trap.
They can be nice. They're often not really they're not significant. They're just kind of sort of light entertainment, often with like a novelty or gift shop.
Right, and you can't get out of them. That was another catch to the tourist trap. You're trying to get out of it. Like I'm inside, I paid the money, now I want to leave. And it becomes a real hassle to get out of these places.
Some tourist traps are nice. Like I thought Rainbow Village in Taiwan was a tourist trap, but I thought it was really nice.
Rainbow Village, what is that about?
It's some
artist,
old gentleman decided to paint all these abandoned buildings.
Oh, yes.
It's kind of, apparently there's controversy to it. I thought it was kind of pretty.
Oh, okay. Is it like an artist hangout or something like that?
I think that the local people just a lot of them wanted to be left alone or get it redeveloped. And basically he made it into sort of quasi-important place. And so there was like this tension between people who want to visit it and the locals who just want quiet.
We want to sell it, build condominiums and apartment buildings. And
it's in kind of rural Taichung. So it's not necessarily on the beaten path.
Yes. I remember some of the stranger architecture in Taiwan was a big area that had, they look like flying saucers.
Oh, I haven't been to that. Have you been to that?
No, but it has flying saucers like from outer space. I've seen pictures of it. I don't even know if it's still there. But
I think it's still there. I think it's totally abandoned is what I heard.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely abandoned.
I think it was some sort of like advanced space age, like 1950s ideal kind of living.
It had that weird 1950s fiction alien landings on. Yeah, I didn't believe it either when I saw it on the news.
I think talking about kind of architecture stuff.
Sure.
So I think Chicago and Skokie, where I grew up, is a very flat place. I think it's hard for people to imagine. So like the only sort of notion we have of like mountains or even hills are kind of tall buildings. So Chicago has just a very storied and epic like this set of skyscraper. I think the word skyscraper actually came from Chicago.
Maybe. I thought it would be New York. But
no, I think Chicago had this, I think it's a bank building that was 10 stories or something, and it was a skyscraper.
That was a 10 building, 10 floors.
There's a physical weight. My mom's an architect. There's a physical weight limit to how high you can build brick, apparently, because of the actual physical mass and the amount you need to support at the base.
You need steel beams.
Steel beam construction changed everything.
All right. See, these are things I had no idea about. Yeah, so you're in Skokie or wherever, and you graduate your high school, and you go to college. Where did you go?
So I went from Skokie, which is kind of a quiet but actually very international, like very like first and second generation immigrant town.
Sure, a lot of it's famous. Yeah, for immigrants.
I think the one other thing I'll say about Skokie before we move on from it is I think at my high school 70 languages were spoken, something ridiculous.
Oh my God, amazing!
But people got along. It was I don't understand why it's so difficult for people
today to get
along.
I don't understand either. We're talking about America right now.
People. I don't think there was that much that made us different. We had different food. I liked International Day, but I went from Skokie, which was kind of adjacent to this major city, Chicago, to this place in upstate New York called Syracuse, New York.
Syracuse.
And I went to Syracuse University.
Wow, that's a good school.
It's not too bad.
Yeah, I've always been interested in the programs when I was a younger man, thinking about going to graduate school maybe. But so Syracuse must have been, now that's sort of that's like right next to Canada, right? That's like physically.
It's pretty cold.
You can walk across the bridge or something, right? Or drive.
It's within driving distance of Canada. I mean, most of the sort of the north areas of upstate New York and sort of. So you're not that far from. Like Niagara is on the border, for instance. Niagara, New York, I think.
Another tourist trap.
You think what? No. Niagara Falls is beautiful.
That used to be the honeymoon place. Everyone took their honeymoons to, but that was back in the 50s.
That's before my time. I don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
I thought it was unbelievably epic to sit next to
Niagara Falls. Okay.
But upstate New York, very, very cold, a lot of snow. But there's a lot of skiing. There's a lot of hiking. During the summer, you can go to like the Adirondacks, go rock climbing.
So that's very different from your life experience before.
Very different. It was very mountainous. I would say more snow, more consistently. I think it didn't. I wish I'd kind of put more consideration into where I was going. I just kind of wanted to get away from home.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a very, there's two ways to go. You could have gone to Texas, which is completely different from Chicago, or New York is a bit cold. Buffalo is the place where they really got hit hard a lot of times.
Syracuse is not so dissimilar. Buffalo gets hit worse, but Syracuse gets hit pretty bad.
All right. So you arrive in Syracuse, and you are going to. Do you know what you want to study, or do you have a year or two before you can make a decision?
I think I always dreamed of being an engineer. I think that sort of engineering is the closest thing we have to magic. But I was
interesting. Yeah.
I don't think I had the technical preparation to do that. I ended up with a degree in information science, which is a bachelor's of science, but I think doesn't sort of have the same gravitas as like mechanical engineering or mechatronics or something.
Yeah, information science is kind of it's for me it's hard to pinpoint what that is. But if you say engineering, then I'm thinking building things.
But you touch, so that's funny, you do touch information science a lot. So the biggest,
yeah, of course,
biggest thinker I would say I would say, other people can say what they want, but I think the biggest thinker in information science is a guy named Claude Shannon,
Shannon.
He has the distinction of being one of, I think, less than 5 people in history to invent a field of mathematics and then solve all the problems in it.
Sounds very convenient.
Well, no. Like the whole internet, like cell phones, computer networks, everything runs off of your computer. Like,
all right.
So this idea of like binary, like
sure.
ones and zeros.
Ones and zeros.
That was
binary.
him. That was him.
Well, he could have added another number. Come on.
Well, so he understood that like Boolean algebra was really important and could be used in like computational systems. I'm gonna.
Go ahead.
I don't want to like nerd out on it too much.
No, our listeners are a variety, mostly Taiwan military troops that had studied this stuff actually in the university.
Well, I'm not going to do it justice, but he basically found that like the sort of signal to noise in like an energy system and like the signal to noise in information like in the abstract like are the same, that you could show that those are functionally equivalent and that you could use the ideas around energy systems in information systems, and that allowed you to have redundancy in telecommunications. It allowed you to like know that you got like a signal that had fidelity, that you could reliably encode information, that you could do all these really interesting operations to manipulate information. Shannon was great. I think.
What years are we talking about here that he did all this?
I want to say the 50s and 60s.
Wow.
I think that was he was at Ma Bell. I don't know if it was AT&T
we don't call
at that
Ma
point.
Bell. We call Ma Bell is a nickname for Bell.
Yeah, Bell. He was at Bell Labs.
Telephone,
So
Bell
there's.
Labs,
I think.
Ma means mother.
Yeah, mother.
Ma Bell. Yeah.
So there was this book called The Genius Factory that I read about all these. I think a lot of them won like Nobel Prizes.
Did he win?
He might have.
That would have been completely unfair if he had not won.
Well, but he was easily one of the smartest people there. Like easily.
I've never heard of him.
Doesn't mean he wasn't important. I mean, there's a lot of people that go unsung. A lot of the world runs on the inventions of men and women that live in silence. I think it's...
Yeah, absolutely true. Totally. But yeah, we should honor those who...
He didn't make any money, probably, is why you haven't heard of him.
That's probably the problem, too. You hear these horror stories of someone who created a new vaccine. Polio, I don't know, the guy polio, he got a Nobel Prize, I think.
Jonas Salk, I think.
Yeah, I assume he got one.
I don't actually know that he did. I think that if you ask the average person my age or younger, they have no idea who he is. He gave it away. He gave it away for free. He didn't make billions of dollars.
Well, it was so horrific.
People don't remember. Yeah. People, but like.
Yeah. Well.
So people couldn't walk from this disease. People died in childhood. It killed scores and scores. It killed presidents and politicians and movie stars and people from every walk of life.
People were terrified to go to swimming pools and
It's like we decided as a species to get rid of it, and we did. It was good. We got rid of polio. It was amazing. I wish we did more things like that.
Well, it wasn't my generation, but it was a generation just before mine that had the polio issue, and I had a lot of older folks around me that had it, survived it, and they were crippled.
It scarred people for life. It was
crippled,
terrible.
But when you don't have that fear anymore, you relax and you enjoy and try new things. But
there's this fancy phrase though, the hedonistic treadmill. You ever hear that?
What's hedonism, first of all?
It's like a love of pleasure.
Hedonists. Well, yes, they just want to live and have fun, and they don't care about responsibility.
So but the problem is that with the average person, I think every time you remove something like polio, something truly horrible, like we just kind of set some new expectation about like trying to like fix some other problem in our lives. Like we're never satisfied.
Right. Well, that's natural, I think.
You could just say we're grateful for what we have.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, before polio, there was,
there were a lot of horrible things.
There was tuberculosis, which was quite horrible.
There was just basic infections.
Yeah.
I mean, forget polio.
Oh, yeah. If you cut your finger before they had antibiotics.
You weren't losing your hand. You were maybe losing your life.
When you think of people who used to volunteer to fight in the American Civil War without antibiotics.
That's crazy.
What were they thinking? And some of them survived very well. After being shot, they would still survive.
War is less brutal than it used to be, even though it's very brutal.
Right.
Although, who am I to tell military people that?
Well, no, of course. It can go off the rails pretty quickly. So you're there, and you realize you're not going to be an engineer.
So I get a degree in information science.
All right.
And then I start working in industry. I do pharmaceutical analytics.
What is that exactly? That sounds kind of illegal.
No, not at all.
Pharmaceuticals means medicine, drugs.
I worked, I'm not going to get into the specifics, but I worked for about like a year and a half for a subsidiary of a giant pharmaceutical company that's like a really big one, but they were a third-party vendor that took all the FDA data and took all the interactions with the doctors and tried to get the doctors to prescribe more drugs.
Oh, okay.
And I always kind of found it really frustrating because we knew where the sick people were, but we weren't trying to like get sick people more drugs. We were trying to like get doctors that already prescribed drugs to sell more drugs.
Oh, yeah.
And it's
ethically, it's morally even, it's questionable.
I understand why they do it from a business decision because it's always easy to get somebody who sold something for you once to sell it again. It's a much harder problem to get somebody who's never bought from you to buy for the first time. But I don't think I was that great at it. So I did like the analysis of the data and I cleaned the data and I spit out reports about the data and I asked them to collect other data.
Sounds like a good paying job.
It was a good paying job out of college, but I don't think I was cut out for it. And then I did a little bit of other computer work, but I don't think it was really, it's very meticulous work. And it's also like the work that you do doesn't feel very meaningful. So after I did a pharmaceutical analytics, I helped do some of the sort of back end work for, call them internet deals or advertising. And I didn't like that either, and that was even more morally ambiguous because selling people things they don't need.
Ambiguous means we're not sure what it is.
Yeah, it's unclear if it was good or bad.
Morally ambiguous means, is this right? I don't know. This could be illegal. This could be immoral.
So then I kind of went on a very strange journey, kind of to where I am now.
We're talking about an emotional.
Professional journey.
Professional journey. Oh, okay. So sometimes people say, I went through an inner journey, my heart, my mind, my who am I as a human being. But yeah, people can go on a professional journey. What am I good at? What can I do to help people, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So I worked some kind of like very labor-intensive job, menial jobs. I worked as a mover, as a welder, as a woodworker. did a very crazy fire project that went horribly wrong. If we want to talk about that, it was not my fault though.
It never is your fault when
Well,
when you say it was not my fault.
So,
yeah, of course it was your fault.
I think it's kind of funny. So
Let me ask you about welding, because did you go to school for welding? Because that's a
No, sort of. I found there was a government program that would give you education in like a trade.
right.
And so I got certified American Welding Society certifications.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm a certified. Well, not now, they've lapsed, but I can still put on good bead.
Buddies of mine who went out of high school, didn't go to college, got welding degrees, welding certificates, and they made unbelievable amount of money.
Well, you don't want to be a welder, you want to be a fabricator.
Oh, I see.
Or a boiler maker. You want to have a specialty.
All right.
So like a fabricator can do can fit up and weld like complex assemblies.
Okay.
A boiler maker mostly does pressure vessels. There's other specialties. Underwater welding is very dangerous, but the most lucrative.
Oh my God, yeah. Particularly for nuclear plants. When they go down there and they're trying to fix something.
I wouldn't want to deal with underwater welding. You just have such a short lifespan. But I was a good welder. I still am a good welder. The trick of it is actually to have a really light touch.
Oh, okay.
And really understand what's going on. But I did all these jobs, but I was kind of in the background thinking about how to start my own business.
All right.
So I come from like 4 or 5 generations of business people. Like,
all right.
So my father and my father's father and my father's father's father and my mother's father, my mother's father's father and my sister and my other sister,
Sounds
my
like
cousin.
Yeah. It sounds like the entire family is. You're lucky because you had those people in your life, and today with divorce so high, a lot of people don't even know who their fathers are.
Well, that's a whole can of worms.
A whole can of worms there. But you had a support system.
Yeah, my family's very loving. They're difficult people because they're very.
I saw the movie Godfather.
Well, we're not Italian, just to be clear. No, they're very hard-headed people, but they're very loving, and they've been very supportive. So I came over. I decided I wanted to do manufacturing. I think that they're just. I like the idea of creative enterprise, like the idea of coming up with something, an unmet need in the market. I like physical goods where there's like a tangibility, where you can touch them, you can understand what they do, versus the software was kind of really abstract. And I did a lot of manufacturing stuff. I did the welding. I did a variety of kind of odd jobs. I even did some model making.
What kind of model making? Because in Taiwan they think of
no.
these little dolls.
No. Model making can be is a very wide field.
All right.
In what I'm talking about is like industrial prototypes.
Oh, okay.
So I can't name drop because it was.
Oh, sure. Don't worry about it.
But I worked for like I was very 5 or 6 levels deep away from the major client, which was a major industrial chemical manufacturer. That's what we'll call them.
We'll just call them that.
And so I would work with a bunch of other people to build up like one-off, like sometimes it would be a sales demo or sometimes it'd be like an internal training tool. And so you'd build like these really weird assemblies that would be control systems for like a chemical plant or something.
Okay.
And so my job would be to like cut up all the tubes and polish them and make all the metal pieces and figure out how all the brackets go together. So you'd have like these 500 or 1,000 part assemblies.
Jeez.
And you'd work on them for months, and then they just kind of disappear, and then you'd hope the client.
I hope it works.
My favorite, I think, I really liked the pig launcher.
Pig launching a pig in space.
No. Apparently, I don't know. This is what I was told. I don't design these systems. I didn't do any of the design work.
We never do design.
But apparently, if you swap the fluids in like a tube, you have this like weird. I don't know if it's silicone. It's kind of this kind of rubbery thing, which is called a pig, and you push that into the tube to swap from like color A to color B or chemical A to chemical B.
Pig doesn't mean pig. It's an acronym.
I don't know.
You don't have any idea.
I just know that they had this like weird kind of like football-y thing they'd put in the tube that was like basically created a seal that allowed you to transfer one liquid to another liquid. And so we did a demonstration piece where we built. I was a relatively minor part of it, but I enjoyed the parts that I was involved in. And so I think it was like 20 feet long and like 15 feet high. and you'd have this tube, and you'd see this giant rubbery thing going through the tube, and on one side there'd be blue liquid, and on the other side there'd be red liquid, and you could see how it would transition from one liquid to the other.
Okay.
It
changed color, right?
No. So you'd have different liquids. So you create a seal to effectively switch over the tubes. You'd basically be scraping the tube as you go along with the pig.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I did weird model making. I also did some artistic stuff. I worked for the Stagehands Union in Chicago. I worked at the union shop.
Wow, you bounced around.
Well, I just wanted to collect kind of interesting experiences.
That's a good thing to do. Yeah.
So we built like giant Christmas decorations and car show stuff. I really liked the Stagehand Union. They were nice people overall. They built a lot of like very beautiful stuff. But the craziest thing I think that I built, the one that like everything that could go wrong did go wrong. There was this thing called, it was an artistic project that the city of Chicago sponsored. They called it the Great Chicago Fire Festival. And
oh, no, that's not a good name for it.
It's a terrible idea. And it involved building and burning down a 3-story building as public art.
What?
Yes.
It was a real building? Or was
it was like a shell of a building, but it was a full shell. It was a full 3-story shell.
But they had that
made of wood.
Made of wood and don't they use plastic? Not plastic, but paper. Wall?
We covered in paper. Yeah.
Right. I've seen.
So and we had we had people like write like wishes, and they put their wishes on the
grandma. I miss you.
All these things, right? So we're on this place called Northerly Island, which is kind of adjacent to McCormick Place, if you know Chicago. Kind of.
No, but it's okay.
It's just like this island that used to be an airport, but then the mayor didn't like that they had an airport for all the rich people, so he tore it up because he didn't get along with the politicians in the capital of Illinois. It's like a whole political thing.
Oh, yeah. Chicago is a big political...
Muckety-muck.
Very famous political corruption.
A lot of intense democratic politics.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. But go ahead, please.
So there's this island, basically, that's like a couple 100 feet away from Chicago. It's not very far at all, called Northerly Island, and we built this 3-story building. So I'm up in a cherry picker with a nail gun, like nailing in place these panels with this other guy. And during when we're setting it up, there's these 20-mile-an-hour winds. Remember we were talking about winds earlier?
Yes.
Okay. So the previous year it had rained, so they didn't successfully set the small buildings on fire that they built on boats. So this year they were going to build it on land, and they were going to cover it up. They uncovered it. They were ready to light it on fire.
And you got thousands of people there.
Thousands of people there.
Watching. How far away were they from the building?
Not very far, a couple 100 feet. But that's not the problem. So it's 20-mile-an-hour winds all day, because they were exposed right on the lake.
Sure, yeah. Did it tear the paper?
No, much worse.
It did tear the paper.
No. So we light it up. It's this huge inferno, biggest fire I've ever seen. It's so beautiful.
And you saw Oppenheimer.
Well, I did not in person.
What I'm saying is
it was gorgeous and beautiful. There were fireworks. It was great, right? So the fire, it sends up all this ash into the air because there's so much wind.
Right.
And just downwind, like half a mile away, Chicago has all these boats, all these sailboats, because there's always wind.
And they're watching. They're drunk.
No. They're having a barbecue. And all of a sudden, all this burning ash comes and burns holes in their sailboat sails.
Oh, no.
And they sue the art organization, and they go out of business.
God. You're lucky you didn't set the boats on fire.
But it was super beautiful while it lasted. It was the craziest thing I think I've ever been directly involved in.
I'd love to see a video of this.
You can find it. It was made international news. It was a disaster.
Yeah, you can stand there with pride and say, I almost burnt Chicago down again.
Kind of, yeah. That'd be a funny shirt. The arts organization, when they went out of business,
after you got a prison,
they did a sale of all the crazy art stuff that they had and all the people coming in. It was kind of like a weird deconstructive festival.
People deconstruct a festival?
Well, they took all the weird art. They had all the pianos that shot flamethrowers and
No.
They were a crazy organization.
You got to go to America, folks.
I think.
Oh my God!
They were called Red Moon. The organization.
Okay, look it up, folks.
Red Moon, Great Chicago Fire Festival.
Yeah, Chicago Fire Festival. Red Moon Chicago Fire Festival. Look it up and
so-
look for my friend.
Well, maybe not. I'm listed on the page as one of the people. But
Did the crowd go crazy and run?
oh, the crowd had a great time. No, there were no problem with the crowd. It was only the boatyard
It was
and
the
stuff.
boatyard was on fire.
Yeah. I think it was.
Do you think they were there just to see it too? That they had let's have a
No.
barbecue
They had
and
no
some-
idea. Imagine you're just sitting there at your barbecue, your yacht club, and all of a sudden it just starts raining down like burning embers.
You see a nuclear bomb go off in the distance, and you're like, oh well, whatever.
It's a Sunday.
It's a Sunday.
So I jumped around all these jobs. I did all these kind of wacky things. I set up a wood shop, metalworking shop at my house. I was building kind of weird stuff.
All right. Not birdhouses. Oh.
No. I did a lot of competitive DIY online.
Do it yourself.
There's like Instructables.com and stuff. I competed in weird competitions for very small prizes.
Well, in America, our audience is Taiwanese, and they don't understand. They think that they're supposed to get out of college, get a good job, save their money, get married, and then create a family. In America, it's completely like, you get out of college, and then you sort of jump from job to job to job to job.
Well, wait, my story is not very typical.
I think it is typical for your 20s. This is your 20s.
Yeah,
right?
this is my 20s.
That's normal.
I think a lot of people work more white collar or blue collar jobs.
Yeah, but they still do variety.
Yes, I think a lot of people kind of bounce around. They try to figure out which sort of, I don't know, which career path is right for them.
Yeah, that's normal. I think it's very normal, and a good experience.
I don't think most people dabble in both white collar and blue collar work, and I don't think most people end up starting their own business.
People really don't think of blue collar as a good job, and they really look down on it sometimes.
It's some of it's dirty work, some of it's very hard work. I think that it's much closer to like the law of the jungle. In some cases, like you see some really rough stuff. Like I worked as a mover for less than a year, just kind of
So you're moving people's furniture,
rich people,
in a truck,
a
big truck,
with a bunch of maybe they have papers, maybe they don't.
Huh? What do you mean they don't have papers?
You know what I mean when they don't have papers.
They don't. They're illegal.
Yeah, there's some question about their immigration status.
All right. They're on the run.
But I moved Obama's neighbors and stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, we moved rich people. It was good. It was good pay.
You find a dead body in a closet or something?
No. You find other weird stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I listened to audiobooks. I was just trying to make space in my life to try to figure out what I was doing. I felt a little lost. So then I kind of ended up wanting to do manufacturing stuff because I'd done all the building all this stuff, and I had the technical degree, but it really wasn't doing much for me. So I decided to try to look at doing something with exercise equipment.
Oh.
That's
my area. I used to be a lifter.
Really?
Yeah. When I was young.
Well, Taiwan got into the exercise equipment game. I think it was metal casting, weight plates.
Oh, did they?
That was how I think Johnson got started. There was some demand. He apparently was just kind of selling, trying to see what people would buy, and that's what they bought. And so he did exercise equipment, or that's what I've heard. I don't know if it's a true story.
Yeah, I've been inside their shops here.
It's good quality equipment.
Yeah, it's good quality equipment. It's. For me, it's like people buy these exercise bikes, and then after a while, they turn them into clothes hangers. Throw clothes hangers. They throw their jackets and clothes on there. When you come back, you're going to come back on the next program. I want you to talk about how the hell you got on an airplane and got on. What possessed you to give up your muscular labor jobs of welding and creating things to try something completely different. This is John, and Fantastic Formosa is going to close out right now. I hope you enjoyed this program, and stick around, okay? All right.